Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking about our fast, more efficient design for industrial machinery, for NX Design. Our agenda today, first we're going to talk about spatial integrated systems, who we are, what we are about. Then we're going to go over the market challenges and trends. We're also going to go over the keys to machinery design, along with flexibility, ability, and confidence. And then lastly, we're going to go over success with Siemens and SIS. So let's talk about spatial integrated systems and who we are. We have actually been in business since 1997. Our primary focus is with reverse engineering along with software development and training. We also do mostly the CAD and modelers and designers, manufacturing engineers, business professionals. We also collect intense experience in implementing and managing engineering, maintenance, logistics, and information technology projects. You want to check us out on our internet site. It's www.sis.inc.org. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Matt Pfieffer, our presenter from Siemens.
All right, thanks, Alex. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Great.
All right. Thanks, Alex, again. Well, welcome everyone to our session this afternoon. And what we're going to be talking about, as Alex already stated, is how NX plays in the machinery design marketplace. And we'll talk about some primary areas, as she already pointed out. First and foremost, we'll talk about some of the market challenges and trends that happen in the industry today. And then we'll look at what those keys to machinery design and how NX can work on those for you and make those areas much easier for you to succeed in. So some of those trends and some of those things that we see taking place. First and foremost is that we're seeing more and more increased automation in the industry. What we mean by that is not only the machinery design itself and designing the mechanics and those types of things, but also integrating software into those machines, that they're much more complex than they used to be. We also have a lot of product configuration, meaning that these machines actually talk to other components or other machines in the shop, in the manufacturing processes. So there's a lot more intelligence there, again, than just designing the machine itself. There are environmental and safety issues. In particular, many of the industry standards today require that machines run more efficiently so that they consume less energy. Those types of areas are required. And of course, most companies out there are required to deliver a turnkey solution. So as this is set up at the customer site, it's ready to run once it's set on the shop floor. And we look at service profitability, and really that takes us over to the last bottom right corner image here of low profit margins. And what the industry is seeing out there, and this isn't just what Siemens is saying, it's what we see and what analysts are talking about, is that machine tool builders, the last one on the list there in the bottom right corner, are seeing the lowest profit margins in history, while medical equipment and drug manufacturers, maybe not to the surprise of many folks on the call today, aren't too surprised at the fact that those are very high profitable areas in today's marketplace. So how do we help those machine tool builders? Because we still need that huge industry out there to be successful. So some of the things that we're seeing, again, some of these trends, look at the example on the left-hand side with Morisiki, and that they had this machine selector on their website. Because instead of just designing a basic machine and hoping it fits into every other category and every solution for all their customers out there, they realized they have to have a customized approach. Things like, what chuck size, part diameter, tool storage capacities, all these have to be customizable in their design to meet the industry trends. As it's shown there on the right side of the screen, that we hope that one size fits all, but really that's come to an end. And because of that, you need to automate and create more design more quickly to come up with those solutions for your customers. So when you look at the six images on the screen, what all these products have in common, from beer to computer wafers to cookies, jewelry, maybe a tablet of some kind, and a tire. Well, the one common thing they all hold is the fact that each one of those is made with a specialized, complex piece of machinery. Right? But each one has a very specific task and how it has to accomplish those things. And that's how NX can help you get your job done more efficiently. So what's the impact on the business? Really, again, we talk about you need to have machine design that's more flexible. We got to make sure that it's not too difficult to reuse existing designs. So where there is some commonality from one machine to the next, be able to reutilize all of those components in your next design very efficiently. Being able to find those components sometimes is just as important as knowing they existed in the first place. And most customers struggle with being able to find those previous designs. You know, you need to be able to manage those customer requirements more efficiently and what your customer needs for their designs. And, of course, meeting those time-to-market goals. And we have a lot of tools to help you complete all of these tasks we talk about there. And first and foremost is visual collaboration. And just as the image shows on the right-hand side of the screen, you may be designing one piece of machinery, but you need to have it so that everyone in the organization, not just engineering, but everyone on the team can view that information, know what's going on with that machine, and be able to make changes to it, analyze those changes, make input for other design concepts. All of that has to be built into your final solution. You can't rely on just the CAD system to solve everything. So let's look at these keys to machinery design. And there's three primary areas, as you see listed there under the keys to the machinery design area. And here's those three. So that NX delivers flexibility to develop these products very quickly. We have to be able to manage the complexity of what not only the singular machine represents, but what the whole suite of machines that you may design represents. And make sure you have confidence in your designs, that they're going to be right the first time. As the old saying goes, if you don't have time to do it right, how do you have time to do it twice? So we got to make sure that our tools give you that kind of strength and confidence. So let's look at the first area, the flexibility of product quality. One of the first things that we talk about with NX is that it's an integrated solution. So we have multiple disciplines within a single interface, so it's easy for the customer to distribute this throughout the entire organization, and that everybody has a confidence level on what the product looks like, how it operates, and all these different solutions that you may require. From concept design in the top left-hand corner, these may even be just 2D drawings in a CAD system. In ours, it may be an AutoCAD as an example. They may even be paper drawings, but we can bring that information directly into the NX environment and utilize that to start to build models from. And you're going to see an example of that in just a few minutes. Of course, we need to create those detailed designs. We need to create drafting and documentation on top of that for manufacturing purposes. We may need to do simulation and analysis to make sure parts aren't going to fail, when they get out into the field. Of course, do the NC programming to put tool paths on these components and manufacture these on your shop floor. And for that, you may need tooling design, as you see in the image in the bottom of the screen, for fixtures. Again, NX well suited to do all of these disciplines for you. And then finally, even inspection programming with CMM, coordinate measurement machines, as you see there, and making sure that you're checking those components that they're right based on the original designs. So it's one thing to talk about how all of those different things are required in your workflow. It's another to show how this actually functions through the NX product suites. And it's done in the way we call the master model process. And it's all focused at reducing your engineering time, making sure you have less errors, because those errors are really the most costly of anything out there, and making sure that you have process standardization so you can repeat this process over and over in the future to be more efficient. So when you look at the image here, really what it represents is a machine design there on the left-hand side of the screen for the NX master model with thousands of parts and components in it, lots of moving components and all. This is actually one of our customers. It's a bronze machine that makes, it actually packages up roof tiles. Well, as you start that design, the standard workflow in the industry in the past was you'll design the entire machine and then start to pass that information downstream for maybe analysis, manufacturing, fixture design, those types of things. And if a change takes place, you have to stop all those downstream applications and kind of restart the process again, make the changes in engineering, and then pass those downstream again. What's nice about the NX master model process is we can take these things and work on them concurrently versus in series, as an example. And by concurrently, we mean that we've already designed part of the machine. We take that on into analysis and simulation. We start to work on fixturing and tool paths. We can do all of these downstream applications to it. So what happens when there's a design change that takes place? All of it ripples through the design automatically for you. As that design change happens, your analysis will be recalculated, your drawing sheets will be updated, your fixtures will be changed automatically, and your tool paths will update automatically. These are the time savings we talk about with a fully integrated solution that few companies offer in the industry today. Now, when we talk just about the design side of things for a minute, so just focusing on CAD, we bring the best tools for you to boost productivity. Now, first and foremost, we certainly offer parametric feature-based modeling. And that's traditional modeling where you go out, you put dimensions on a block, and if you change those dimensions, the block stretches to the new size. And that's been around for many years. What we've introduced is a patented technology. It's unique to our company itself and Siemens, and it's called Synchronous technology. And this is a tool that allows you to use multi-CAD data if you want to. So I can bring in files from other CAD systems if I want and make these types of design changes very quickly and easily. It allows for very quick design evolution and is fully integrated with feature modeling. So whether you want to use the feature-based modeling or the synchronous tools to literally stretch and pull your model exactly how you need it to look, they work at the same time together with one another. And we have template-driven design. And what we mean by that is having tools to create family of parts type of solutions, but family of parts on steroids. And I'll describe that here in just a few minutes for you. So let's look a little more at synchronous technology. And as I stated, this is something unique to Siemens in the industry, unique to NX. And what it allows you to do is using it on existing files you've created in NX or on third-party files. It may be a step file. It might be a SolidWorks file. It might be a CATIA file. And you can bring these into the NX environment and make design changes to them. Well, you can imagine if there were dimensions on there or if there were steps of how it was created originally, you may or may not understand exactly how that was created, in the first place. So it's tough to know how to make a change. With Synchronous, you don't worry about that. So if I had a guy design this 5 years ago in my engineering department, I don't really care how he created it in the first place. I don't have to even analyze how he did that. I just go in, grab the faces I want to move. Maybe I want to apply some dimensions to it and drive those dimensions here with our Synchronous tools. Very simple, very easy, with immediate feedback, and you can add that intelligence to the model. So if you bring in a model from another CAD system, there's no dimensions or anything on it, we can place those dimensions onto it and drive those accordingly. Again, unique and incredibly powerful in the industry today. The next area is something we call Product Template Studio. And the images at the right start to give you a little bit of an idea of what it's capable of doing. But this tool is all about creating, you think of it as family of parts. So you have a part that may have 5 or even 10 different configurations that you may want. Now, most CAD systems out there today are going to give you the tools to make a family of part design. You can model it up one time, stretch the value, save it off as another design, and have those kind of in a chart. What we allow you to do with that, though, is actually embed validation. And what we mean by that is you can embed analysis into this, you can embed the documentation into this, so that if you make a change, you can have a list come up on the screen of what component you want it to look like. You click on it and it changes. But as you change that, it will also do an analysis in the background. It will update drawing sheets in the background and give you any warnings or errors if those design changes would be something that couldn't be manufactured or might break under the day-to-day uses out there on the machine. So much more intelligent capabilities here than just creating some models and having them in a chart to select from. So let's look at some of the capabilities here and what we're talking about inside of NX. If we go in and take a look at this, you'll notice we have a piece of machinery here. We need to build a coupling or a linkage between a couple components. And we're going to open an AutoCAD file. So with NX, you can open up DWG and DXF files. We can preview how those look and see what layers are turned on and off, those different types of things. Notice here, we've just brought this into our 3D environment, but of course it's just a 2D drawing, so it's sitting flat on the screen. We can still understand those layers as an example, so we turn off dimensions or different line elements we don't want to see, just to be left with geometry that you're really interested in here. And ultimately what we want to do with this is take this 2D geometry and turn it into a 3D model. Now, for those of you that work in CAD on a regular basis, you're very familiar with the fact that, this is what we call dumb geometry, so to speak, in the industry, where if I would grab one of these lines out here, even though I'm in a 3D window, if I grab one of these lines and just drag it out into space, it's just going to move a singular line element. There's no intelligence of the geometry linked to one another, like tangent or endpoints connected. Well, we do that automatically. Just by selecting on the geometry, we'll put that intelligence to it and make sure that endpoints stay connected, tangencies stay that way, a center of a hole stays centered on another hole out there for concentricity. You can do all those with just a couple clicks, like what you're seeing on the screen. Well, now that we have some intelligent 2D geometry, we just want to bring this into our 3D model. This way, even though we're in 3D environment designing our machinery, we may have some 2D geometry that we'd like to incorporate and utilize to turn into a 3D design. So what we're doing here is just grabbing on some shapes on the 2D model, grabbing on some shapes on the 3D design, and you'll notice how it's now imported or placed right into the machinery design environment we're working on. So now we want to rotate the shape around that you see here in 2D so it matches up more closely with the other components there in the assembly. Notice how you rotate that around, but it doesn't quite line up appropriately with that other linkage. And that's not a problem. We're going to use Synchronous here in just a couple of minutes to solve that for us. So here we've brought in a part that is close to what we want for our final design, but it may not be quite perfect, but that's okay. We can tweak that to whatever we want. So notice how quickly and easily here we're taking these 2D sketches. We just grab on an element and pull or stretch on that to start to build this into 3D. Here we'll take a couple of other shapes that we want to revolve. They're circular in shape. We just tell it a centerline axis as an example and revolve that shape around the design. And then we also want to be able to remove some material on the inside where a shaft goes through this linkage that we're building. And so we'll just revolve another shape, but we told it to remove the material when we revolve that inside the parts. We're getting pretty close to our final design. And then obviously we need another hole out here. You notice it picked a line and a couple small chamfer edges, so it creates that hole with the chamfered for inserting those shafts. Still not lined up. Don't be overly concerned. We're going to fix that here in just a minute. But the next thing we'll do is dynamically slice through our assembly. And this just gives you better visualization capability in complex assemblies, to be able to slice through the assembly and look at it in an appropriate orientation so that you can really see and understand what's going on with the current design and make the appropriate design changes. So you have a lot of different tools at your disposal here. If you want to, we can go in and take the existing sketches that came in that 2D drawing that we brought in, and we take those sketches and literally drag those around on the screen, put those into a new location, or stretch that geometry to another orientation. As you see happening here, we're making the diameter a little bit larger with those sketches. We may also want to make this portion of the part a little bit thicker, because the geometry maybe for the application that we're doing in this machine is going to take a lot of pressure, a lot of load on this. So we want to make sure that we have as much material as we can. We're matching this to other faces out here. So here we're matching a 2D sketch to a 3D face. Now we can have the model update accordingly to it. So far we've just edited the sketches that were created originally within the design, but we can also use these same types of tools with Synchronous to tweak the 3D model so that they match exactly from one component to the next. So you can see, instead of going out and modeling this part from scratch, pulling something in that already exists saves you time and effort to at least get the initial design started. Then we can go ahead in here and really tweak to the final design how we want things to look. Now here, we're just, again, looking at some of these sketches and moving these around relative to other pieces of geometry that we already have in our assembly. So we're just going to line up what we had in that 2D sketch to the primary shaft here for part of this linkage. And we'll go ahead and update that accordingly. And maybe a couple of other things we want to do. You'll notice there's some gaps between some of the shafts and the openings we have in our parts. We want to make sure that they align to one another. They come close to touching one another. So we grabbed one face on our new design, a face on an existing part of the design. We're going to give it a little bit of clearance, about a 1/2 millimeter of clearance there, so it can rotate, obviously. And same thing here. We grab one face on the new design, grab another face on what already existed as a design, and modify the geometry to pull up accordingly and match to those. And of course, you'd have a little bit of an offset or a clearance, so you don't have too high a friction in those particular areas. So here within just a few minutes, we're able to take that 2D geometry, turn it into a 3D model, and make sure that it's matching with the rest of the design in our assembly. Make sure that these components are going to work relative to one another. Now, a little bit later, we're going to take this part that we're creating and actually do an analysis on it, so we can make sure that based on the loads that will be applied to it, that it can withstand those forces. And we've modeled that with heavy enough material, or maybe with a different material that might be stronger to withstand the day-to-day operations and rigors out there as the machine operates. So maybe just one last thing here. You'll notice that there's a step diameter on the underside of this component, and we want to make that a little bit larger in diameter. We're going to have it match this outer face. So it makes that a little stockier, very common design change you may want to do to a component out there. And you can see how we've added that to the material. And as we look at it, the design looks pretty good. We can still see the rest of our assembly out there kind of dimmed out. Now we've brought that back to life, so to speak, where we're bringing that in the forefront, and that's where we're going to work in the assembly. And we may want to see how components work relative to one another in that assembly environment. So the first thing we may want to do is, well, what happens if we turn the shaft from that the motor drive will turn? What happens to these components? Well, you can see as they're linked together now, we can analyze their motion. We could also do interference detections and envelope, we'll talk about that a little bit later as well, detections on how these designs interact with one another. Well, we've got that on one side of our assembly, but if we rotate the model around, we'll notice that we don't have that particular component on the other side of the design. So we're going to go in and do a mirror assembly. And you notice this is a mirror assembly wizard. This wizard walks you through the steps of what it takes to create a mirrored assembly. And we have a lot of these wizards inside of NX to make this happen more quickly, more readily for you, so you're not wondering how to do an operation in the CAD system. We'll walk you step by step through it just with one of the wizards. Now that we've done that, we've put that on both sides. You'll notice now as we start to do the rotation, we can see how that works on both sides of our design and the complex motion analysis we may want to run through here. And this data we can do any types of interference detection, collision, those types of things as well as we run through the design. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of just some basic modeling capabilities, getting things from 2D to 3D, working in that assembly environment. So as we come back and look at, again, some more of the capabilities that NX offers you is the ability to manage complexity. And that's critically important today because machines and everything pretty much in industry today are becoming far more complex than they've ever been. So being able to deal with this complexity, first of all, requires that you can work in the context of an assembly. And that's what you just saw that we did there, where I modeled that part. I did that in the context of the assembly where I could see the other components, making sure I don't build in interferences. In fact, making sure they match to one another as I modify the one shape. But you have to have performance, proven performance in these large assemblies or even massive assemblies. Now, that assembly you just saw a moment ago was maybe only 50 or 60 parts. But we have customers like General Motors with 30 and 40,000 part automotive assemblies. General Electric Jet Engine Division that has 50,000 part jet engines. Or get up to Electric Boat, another one of our customers that designs submarines with our software that literally has millions of parts in their top level assemblies. You have to be very efficient in how you manage that data, and we're really unmatched in the industry today. Well, these machines that you design are very similar. They can get up into tens of thousands, if not over 50,000 parts very easily, depending on how large they are, and we manage that data better than anybody in the industry. And we do that not only through our CAD tools, but also with NX and Team Center. And Team Center is our product data management solution, but a tool that allows you to also do incredible searches, very quick, to find components from the past. I talked about that earlier where you may have designed a machine previously. I want to reuse some of that data, but how do I find it? Team Center will let you get there very, very quickly. And of course, faster assembly validation, so you can resolve problems earlier in the design process, solving and not having all those errors that you may see downstream. So the first way we deal with some of this, especially in the large assemblies, is something we call active mockup. An active mockup allows you to do a complete digital mockup of not only the mechanical but the electrical systems in a machine, test those systems and see how that logic works with the motion analysis, and do that in, again, these massive assemblies. And we can do this through the reuse of CAD neutral data as well. And what we mean by that is a format called JT. Think of that as IGES or STEP in some ways, but JT is a very lightweight format to be able to bring in massive assemblies into one locale at one time. Nice thing about this is it's become an industry standard so that most customers can create these JT file formats, and you can utilize maybe a sub-assembly to your machine that was created in an entirely different CAD system, bring that in through JT, utilize that in your design, and make sure that you don't have any of those interference problems. Look at motion studies, things of that sort. And of course, it can all be managed through Team Center to make sure you can find all of that data, look at different revisions of it, things of that sort. So when we talk about faster assembly engineering, and you saw some of those components performed for you there in the demo, we really look at things like the interference checking, the parametric assemblies, mirrored assemblies, as you saw examples of. But as you get farther down the list, being able to manage things like weight management, not only knowing what the weight of a part is, but what about doing searches on components and knowing how much they weigh, based on what color they highlight on the screen. Doing assembly motion analysis, looking at motion envelopes. A motion envelope is looking at the entire envelope that the part travels during its motion, and making sure you don't design anything else within that interference zone, so to speak. We allow you to do that. And of course, then you look at the routed systems, which is cabling, harness design, assembly path design for those cables, all integrated into one solution set to get your job done for these machine designs. And finally, we talked about confidence in design, making sure that you know the product going out the door is going to work and perform the way you designed it in the first place. And we have a lot of different tools to make sure you're confident in that design. It's not just about, hey, am I confident my design team and my engineers did the proper work to get these machines designed. It's about having tools in your arsenal that allow you to make sure that the systems are checked automatically, even in the background as you're continuing to work day in and day out. The way we do that is through these validation tools that we deliver within the system, and I'll give you some examples of a few different ones out here. But we can do things like, checking critical function requirements or monitoring compliance for regulatory, functional, customer, engineering, manufacturing requirements out there. Maybe you're making machines that the FDA has to approve for food, moving food on a conveyor system and all. We can have all those integrated into the software, so that as you design, if something's designed inappropriately that wouldn't be approved, that will be kicked out automatically. You'll be notified. So the first way we do that, how do you get those notifications, is we have something called HD 3D, or high definition 3D. And what this really does is it gives the user, the designer, the engineer feedback on anything you've incorporated into a design that may be a valid type of design input, or it may let you know if there's some issues or some problems out there. And it will notify you on the screen. You'll see a little highlight on an area or maybe on a part model. When you click on it, you can get a little window like you see there on the right-hand side of the screen, letting you know what the issue may involve. To take that even to a higher level with these design and requirement validations, you look at things through Team Center where we're managing all this, and we do things we call Checkmate is one example of that. Checkmate goes in and can run literally hundreds and about 900 out-of-the-box solutions for checking against everything from how your model was created, are the detail drawings done in the proper format, are dimensions in the proper style and format, are there any problems with how you created something out there in the assemblies. And if you look in the image in the bottom right corner, these setup tests in this dialog, you may want to look at what are the, for company X, here are the assembly checks we're going to do, or machining checks, or manufacturability checks. We can do that for multiple companies, for multiple iterations of your machine design, but do it all within one environment. So you can check and see what all that would work for different industries out there. Of course, also in performance validation, we talk about being able to do structural analysis, or CAE. Now, this isn't just the high-end CAE tools, and we have a lot of those available to you to do everything from basic stress and vibration analysis all the way up through spaceship analysis and temperature change deviations and nonlinear types of examples. But what we're talking about here is wizards that are built into the software for the everyday user to be able to do a quick analysis. That way, the engineer or the designer can run a quick analysis on a part and determine, hey, is that part going to break just on some basic loads I'm going to apply to it? You don't have to be a high-end analyst to figure out how to run this. Again, it's a stress wizard. I'll show you an example of this in a video or in an example demo here in just a minute. But it gives you the chance to look at some what-if simulations, right? Get some very quick feedback on the design. It frees up the analysts so that they're not looking at every single component. Some of the engineers and designers can run some of these initially. And it eliminates that need for all of a sudden at the end of a design, the analyst has to look at multiple components in a hurry to approve those to get those on out to manufacturing. They can already be analyzed throughout the early design process. And then manufacturing validation. And this is an incredibly powerful tool that the system will automatically check things like, can this part be machined? What about if it's a molded part? So it's a plastic injection mold. Is the mold designed appropriately? If it's sheet metal forming, can that sheet metal part even be formed? If you're designing castings, are there issues within that, or assembly issues you may run into? The way these tools work is they are set up in advance, so you have them running all the time. As the designer goes in and starts to create things, if there's an error someplace, you'll see a little red X on the screen, like what you see on the image there on the right-hand side of the screen. When you click on one of those, it'll bring up a small window and notify you that, hey, that hole is impossible to put in that location because there's no way to get a drill bit into that location. You've built another piece of material over the top of that, and it would just be impossible to incorporate. Or you may have undercuts. something that's impossible to machine. Even using an electrode, you couldn't create that particular shape. The software would let you know that. And that's just one example, but this works for all different types of areas, including, like I said, sheet metal forming, casting, assemblies requirements, all those things. Well, this reduces all of those errors right up front, up in the engineering and design cycle, getting that time to market much, much more quickly because you're not making these changes after it's already been manufactured. And we also have issues management tools. Now, what this is it takes all the things you just saw that I just discussed over the last few minutes, but allows you to take this outside of the traditional CAD user environment to allow everyone to collaborate within the organization. And that way they can see this information, they can get feedback on this information, maybe sign off approvals, things of that sort, but that's all also built in with our issues management capabilities. So let's just take a look at some of the analysis tool capabilities here. So as I open up this part, we're going to change view. So you can kind of see this is the part we just created in the assembly a few minutes ago. We want to go and run a quick analysis on it. So we're going to run one of our stress wizards. Again, building the base product of NX, we want to go out and just set up a quick analysis. So we're going to say, there's the part we want to use. Now we want to apply a load. And we're going to put a bearing load on that hole that was just selected out there. And maybe we'll make that about 2,000 foot-pounds of force on that, based on that rotational force you saw earlier that we're going to use on that. Again, someone will get some basic feedback on what those loads might be, but it is critical to be able to apply the loads appropriate, whether it's a load across an entire face or an edge or here a bearing force. And then we'll come back and tell how we're going to hold this part down. So what we're saying here is what's highlighted in orange on the screen. That won't move, but as we apply a load out there, what's going to happen to this part? One of the last couple things you do is you assign what the material is. It will be different, depending on what it's made out of, and how big the little triangles you're going to see come up on the screen for a minute. And for those of you that don't do analysis, all the triangles represent is small nodes that are used to analyze the model in smaller pieces instead of looking at the entire part. Well, now we'll analyze that, and if that needed to be more dense, if it needed to be more triangles, the system would tell you that based on the material characteristics and the loads. It would make it more dense. There would be a lot more triangles out there. So here's the result, and you can see by the color coding where the highest stresses are in red, or in the lighter colors here. But you can also, and it's over-exaggerated to see how that hole would stretch based on the applied loads, but you can also run an animation on this. So you can see, based on that load and the direction that's being applied, how that's going to work apart. Now again, it's intentionally over-exaggerated so you could see it, because in the real world it may only be thousandths of an inch, but that's enough to make that part fail over a period of time. So this can all be done by the base designer, even with a click of a button, creating a report. And this report is everything we just did there, just in a matter of seconds. They created this entire report for what's the mesh density, what were the loads that were applied, what are the results of that, and put a few images out here as well of what the results are. This can then be passed off to the analyst expert, and he can review this very quickly and decide, oh yeah, that part's fine, go ahead and release that to manufacturing, or no, I may need to look at this in a little bit more detail. So those are some of the strengths that we offer inside of NX to make that machine design that much more efficient. So to close things up this afternoon, we'll talk about the successes with Siemens and SIS and some of our customers, and just a few of them here to discuss very quickly. Index, they're the largest turning machine manufacturer in the world, and they saw that by using our software, they're reducing setup times by up to 90% on their machine designs. ANCA, another machine designer out there, reducing their time to market by incorporating our NX tools, and saw that their engineering time was reduced by up to 50% in many cases. And Heidelberg, the world's largest high-speed printing press company, they talk about how powerful it is for the reuse of their 3D data and the FEA analysis and kinematic or motion analysis that we have built into our product to evaluate their machines, make them as efficient as possible, and making sure no errors as they ship these out the door. So, in closing, as a summary of what we've talked about, CAD data management, not only is it designing these tools, but also managing this information and making sure it's shared amongst everyone in the organization. That visual collaboration we talked about, again, everyone looking at it, seeing it, and having input. Quick and easy geometry creation with patented and unique tools to NX like Synchronous technology. Best practice reuse capabilities where we brought in 2D AutoCAD data and we reused that, but then tweaked it to fit accordingly into our design. And all having that integrated with simulation, validation, manufacturing processes downstream. We talked about that master model concept. If the part model changes, everything downstream changes. You don't have to go in and manually make all of that. That's what's going to save you time and make you more competitive in your specific industry. So with that, I thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I have my contact information there. Again, Matt Pfieffer. I work for Siemens. I've been here about 20 years and about 10 years before that in special machine design. So I've been there in creating these very complex pieces of machinery in the industry. And with that, I will just turn it back over to Alex. If we have any questions, comments, we're certainly open to that and keeping the lines open. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate you coming and hosting this webinar with us. And if we do have any questions, please go ahead and put it into the chat box. We'll give you a couple minutes to see if anybody is ready to ask any questions. And again, if you did come in midway with this webinar, we will have a replay, and we will also be doing another replay of this webinar in the future in a couple weeks as well. So be on the lookout for an invite. All right, let's give it a couple more minutes. So far we have no questions. All right, it looks like we don't have any questions. So again, let's thank Matt Pfieffer from Siemens PLM Software for joining us today and presenting this wonderful presentation. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.